Johnny Cochran once said, if the glove don't fit, you know, well, in this case, the glove fits, and it fits great. And I'm doing what I said I would do in the campaign, no different. My philosophy, my personal philosophy is lead, you know, follow, or get out of the way. And so far, we've been leading. We're doing what is right. I've started every meeting that like I said in the campaign, every management meeting I have in that office. I tell everyone, if anyone brings up politics in these meetings, they won't be here next week. We're about in transparency, integrity, and honesty. And on that, I'm going to just diverse for a second here. Just going to take a little turn. The controller lawsuit. I don't want to be crude, but I think it's a bunch of BS. What's going on right now? Wendy Gould is in my office, has been in my office auditing the workers' compensation program for the last 3 weeks. I asked her on July 2nd to come in. Come in, audit, come in, audit, come in. I asked her 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times to come in. Finally, she came in 3 weeks ago. She's auditing me right now as we speak. This is no more about integrity and transparency than this paper is. The issue is $200,000 to Fred Witcher, who lost the lawsuit between Laura Chick and Rocky. That's the only issue that remains on this. If somebody tells you it's something other, like it's a res judicata issue that you need this decision in order to make it clear that she has the power to audit, it's not res judicata. It's not collateral estoppel. It has no going forward value. In fact, today, Wendy Gould said that she withdrew the six subpoenas of Rocky's people. And now the case is moot, so we should dismiss it. Well, no, the case is not moot, because there's still an issue that's out there. And guess what the issue is? Legal fees. Because if I dismiss the case and the judge doesn't rule, that makes the other side the prevailing party. And what does the prevailing party get in a lawsuit? And I'm not going to let you guys pay $200,000. Simple as that. This is two bickering politicians, Laura Chick and Rocky Delgadillo, that got into this fight. Wendy wants to make it her fight for some reason. I don't know why. It's not her fight. It's not my fight. Let the damn thing go to judgment. That way, Fred won't get his money. It doesn't mean anything anyway. You're auditing. So who cares? But the bottom line is that we're in the middle of this thing. The newspapers have picked up on it. But the only issue remaining in this dispute is legal fees. And I've recommended to the council to dismiss the lawsuit upon a waiver by the other side of their legal fees in this lawsuit. Now, I've been a lawyer for 31 years, and I've never won a lawsuit where I've paid the loser lawyer's fees. You know, and I'm not going to start now. But if the council wants to do that, that's the council's choice. Also, the decision to dismiss this lawsuit is not mine. The lawsuit was brought by Rocky on behalf of the city of Los Angeles. Now, those of you who have hired lawyers understand that lawyers do not make decisions. Clients make decisions. Lawyers follow what their clients say. And so in this case, I couldn't dismiss this case if I wanted to without getting sanctioned by the bar, because the lawsuit belongs to the city of Los Angeles, and the decision maker in that case is the city council. And they've advised, they've given us a strategy to use, and we've implemented that strategy. And that's that. What else? We are a hands-on team. I've got the best management team, I think, in the city. If you guys indulge me for a second, I don't know if you guys know who my management team is, but let me tell you a little bit about them. I came in with 7 people. And to this regard, I feel like George Allen. Those of you that remember George Allen, you know, when he was coaching the Washington Redskins, he went out and he hired all these veterans, you know, so they could just win a Super Bowl for the Redskins. I went out and picked the chief deputy. My chief deputy is Bill Carter. Bill Carter is a great man. He's a former deputy city attorney. He's a former deputy DA. I had the pleasure of working with him when I was a DA. He was my law clerk. He was also the former Secretary of Enforcement for Cali, VA, in the Wilson administration. He was a United States Attorney across the street in the Justice Department, in the U.S. Attorney's Office across the street. He was the head of the Environmental Crime Section of that U.S. Attorney's Office, and was later promoted to the head of the Public Integrity, Chief of Public Integrity for the United States Attorney in Los Angeles. He was the one, he was the chief prosecutor in the Rampart case. My second in command is Kurt Livesey. Kurt Livesey has been in law enforcement for 40 years. Everybody in this room who's wearing a uniform probably knows who Kurt is. He was the chief deputy DA under five different DAs, spanning about 35 years. He is affectionately known in legal circles as Dr. Death. Now, why do they call him Dr. Death? I had to go to Oklahoma to get him, first off. He retired, and I had to talk him back into government service. They refer to him as Dr. Death because today, when a case is, we make a decision to go for the death penalty on a case, there is a committee that makes that decision, not just one person. Kurt Livesey, for 27 years, did not head that committee. He was that committee. The County of Los Angeles relied on Kurt Livesey to make the decision as to whether or not to invoke the death penalty on a case in his sole discretion. He has tremendous judgment. Tremendous judgment. He has the ability to look at a situation and just come to the crux of it immediately. It's like having Yoda in your office. The next person I have with me is Jane Usher. Those of you probably know Jane. Everybody thought that Jane Usher came with baggage, that she was a anti-billboard, anti-development, a gadfly. Jane Usher is redefining herself in this office. She is one of the brightest lawyers I have ever met in my life. She was former general counsel for the 1984 Olympics, the Spartan Olympics, the most successful Olympics in the history of this nation. She was former general counsel to USFL, a tremendous, tremendous lawyer. She is extremely knowledgeable on land use and billboards, and she is now showing people in City Hall that she is not unisided, that she is articulate on both sides of the issue, and very impressive. And I am extremely, extremely proud to have her on my staff. Bill, Jane, and I are a tremendous Wankel engine. We are a rotary engine because it covers the criminal, civil aspects of the office, and we blanket it very well. Between the three of us, we can cover every issue that presents itself. David Berger. David Berger is a former DA. He was my competitor in this race, in the primary. A man of tremendous integrity, tremendous fire. He is handling our ethics issues and some special investigations in our office, and is doing a great job. He's adapting our office now to a wireless system, or a paperless system. We're moving from paper to non-paper, which is a big deal when you're talking about 1,000 people and about 15 locations. I brought John Franklin. John Franklin is my PIO. He was a commander in the Sheriff's Department, 35 years in law enforcement. He was Sheriff Baca's public information officer. He also was the commander of Los Angeles County Jail. He commanded 6,000 people, both the Twin Towers and Boucher Street, the old jail. Great guy, tremendous management skills, solid. Again, another law enforcement guy. I brought Gary Schramm to head my Bureau of Investigation. We do not have a Bureau of Investigation, or we did not have a Bureau of Investigation when I took office on July 1st. Today we have a fledgling Bureau of Investigation, and Gary Schramm will be the head of it. He was the Assistant Chief of the Bureau of Investigation for the District Attorney's Office, 35-year law enforcement guy, who retired from the DA's office and came over to, I talked him into coming over to our office, and he's now starting our bureau. Jim Bell, a long-term DA investigator. I worked with him when I was doing death penalty cases down in Compton. Great investigator, and he heads up our criminal section of our Bureau of Investigation. Who am I missing? Merlin. I refer to this man as Merlin, the magician. As you know, we have tremendous budget issues in the city of LA. Because I was not the anointed candidate, my budget was cut more than any other budget in the city of Los Angeles. I took an 18.5% cut in my budget. Try to run your household on 20% less than what you make. I took an 18.5% cut, and that meant on July 1st when I took office, after I made payroll for the year, before I turned the lights on, before I bought toner for the copiers, before I did anything else, after I made payroll, I was $9 million overdrawn. Now, let me just make that even a little bit more harsh for you so you understand this. Everyone who is employed by my office except for me and Bill Carter are members of some union. So I can't just lay people off. There's a collective bargaining agreement that I'm bound to. So I have $9 million overdrawn. I hired this guy that I had heard his reputation. He was Baca's budget guy. Baca was $44 million in the red one year, and he brought in Bill Mangan, and he balanced the budget for Baca that year, in 1 year. He went over to work for Bill Fujioka at the CAO's office, and he worked for the county in the budget. Then Steve Cooley realized that he needed a budget guy because he was out around, so he stole him from Fujioka, and he became the Director of Management and Budget of the District Attorney's Office. He retired from Cooley. I found him, coaxed him out of retirement, and now he's working for me. Let me tell you how good this guy is. It looks like right now, everything, if it doesn't stop raining and the creeks don't rise, it looks as if we are, right now as we sit today, we are $2 million short of funding this office for the year. This guy is a magician because he's given us a plan for what we need to do. We've been adhering to the plan, and we are coming out of this thing, and we are going to balance our budget without cut somebody off or without cutting things, our services. We are doing our job in that regard, and it's like having a Merlin there. He sits at his computer all day, and I look at him and I go, well, this guy doesn't come out of his office. He just bangs away at this thing, but he knows what he's doing, and he's very, very good. And we have a tremendous, tremendous management staff. I am the weak link in that office if there's a weak link. These guys are just tremendous, and I'm so very proud of them. We have some goals that we've set for ourselves. The goal is safer streets, first and foremost. It doesn't do any good if we are able to get our handle around billboards and development and all that, if you're afraid to come out of your house. And so we are, number one, focused on public safety. We are cracking down on gangs in a big way, more so than you actually know or see, but you will hear and see soon what we're doing. We are cracking down on taggers, those people that want to deface your property. I know some people think it's art. I personally think it's graffiti, and it's criminal. And we are going to stop the tagger gangs. And those of you that think that these are just kids with spray paint, it's not. There have been 5 murders in Southern California in the last year associated with tagger gangs. And tagger gangs is the word. It's not tagger crews. Gang is a more appropriate term. There is a tagger gang by the avenues. I'm sure you guys have heard of the avenue gangs. We just did a 1,200 officer takedown of the avenue gangs a couple of weeks ago. It was all over TV. In fact, we showed up with a bulldozer and knocked down a house. One of our tough taking out urban gang headquarters programs did an abatement action on 3 different properties within that neighborhood. But there's a Tiger gang. Their moniker is FTW. Okay? Can you guys figure out what that means?
The world? Yeah.
F the world. Okay? That's their moniker. Well, soon they're going to be out of business. We are going after the Tiger gangs. We are going to enjoin them from congregating together, because let me tell you, when they get together, they're not just talking about Manny Ramirez's baseball batting average or the Dodgers making the World Series. They're talking about what they're going to do next. Just like gang members who congregate together in front of your property are there to intimidate and control property, Tiger gangs do the exact same thing. They put their slogans and their names up on buildings so they can mark that territory as their own, and they can get the notoriety of showing people that this is ours. So we're going after them. Give you some anecdotes of how serious these guys are. 6-year-old kid screams at his mother, "Mom, they're tagging our property." They tackle the 6-year-old kid, they get the spray can, and they put it in his eyes. They spray paint into his eyes, blinding him temporarily. Deputy Sheriff, retired, tried to stop a couple of taggers from tagging his property. Was stabbed 5 times by the taggers. We are looking at this. We're doing something novel, and believe it or not, when I first came up with the idea of tiger injunctions, we got a little blowback in the press. Oh, you can't do that. It's, you know, the ACLU was blowing back on it.
True.
San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange County, Boston, New York, Chicago, all across the country. They've called us now, and they want copies of our Tiger injunctions so that they can implement the same things that we're having. Today I met with the American Prosecutors Association, and I was asked to go onto the board of directors of that association, and we are now bringing, presented an opportunity to bring prosecutors from Louisiana, Chicago, New York, all these metropolitan cities to the city of Los Angeles to learn to do what we do here so that they can take it back to their city and follow our model. So we are doing something right. We're sponsoring legislation. We wrote Senate Bill 426. Hopefully the governor has signed it by now. That is the bill that gives us the right to use confiscated pirated goods. I don't know if you know this, but we seize in LA about $40 million of pirated goods a year. And by that, I'm talking about jeans, sweaters, blankets, toothpaste, things of that nature. And it's got labels on it of different manufacturers. And what happens is that by law, that stuff must be incinerated and destroyed. But there are homeless people all over the city that could use those goods. And if we're able to take those labels off of it and put it back into the commerce, let these people who are less fortunate than us use it, then we're a better society for it. Because why destroy something that's there because it's got a name on it? Rip the name off. Because you know what? You really care if you're cold, if it's an Armani blanket or not. You know? And I'll tell you, those every Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month, I have made it a point to go down and walk Skid Row. Now, you know, I grew up 27 miles south of Skid Row in San Pedro, and I've driven through it but never stopped. And I'm sure most of you have done the same thing. You've driven through it but never stopped. I'm going to tell you right now, as I sit here today, the 2 greatest things I've done in the last 100 days happened to me when I was on Skid Row. I should say 3. The first time I was on Skid Row, I met a guy who had just gotten there 2 weeks before. And lost his job, didn't have anywhere to go, he was sleeping on the streets. I asked him what he did. He said, "I'll do anything, I just need a job, I don't want to be here, it's not safe." And he's right, it's not safe. The next morning I called somebody at the 99-cent store and got him a job. And now he's working, he's off Skid Row. last night I walked Skid Row again, and I met a 74-year-old man whose house burned down. He lost his home 20 months ago. He's been on Skid Row for 20 months. He went to the VA. He's a Korean War veteran. 74 years old. He's been on Skid Row for 20 months. Can't get any help from the VA. Last night, I contacted the Sheriff's Department, the ALADs, and I got him a job in their print shop. And Sergio Diaz has reached out to him tonight, who's the chief of Central, and is going to contact him and let him know that he's got a job. And I reached out this morning to Jane Harmon's office to see if we could have her put some pressure on the VA to find this guy a bed to sleep on rather than the street. He's on a walker. And can you imagine being 74 years old and sleeping on the street? It's just, you know, it's sad. When I gave a press conference on this bill regarding the pirated goods, there were some children there that lived at the shelter, and there were some toys, and I could see them when I was doing the press conference. They were just eyeballing these toys, and just you could see that they had never had anything like this before. And after the press conference, I went over and I took the box. There's no these fake Barbie dolls. There's no Barbie symbol on the doll itself. It's on the carton that they're contained in. So I threw the carton away. I pulled the doll out and I gave it to this little girl. And you could tell that she had never had a doll before in her life. And if you would have seen her eyes when she turned around and walked away with that doll, that's the greatest part of this job. And I'll tell you right now, I thank every one of you for putting me here, because that was an experience in my life that I'll never forget for as long as I live. And that's the kind of good that you can do if you do the right things in this job. And it's just tremendous. It's tremendous. We're cracking down on polluters. We've started an environmental strike force. We're going after a couple of companies. I don't want to give you their names, but we're doing some good things in that regard. We're going after unsafe foods. We did the tainted cheese. We just came back with that. In another vein on that, I'm gonna give you a little something that was on the news today. I told you we're going to take down the issue of outside counsel. Our goal for the year on outside counsel is to reduce it by 50%. We are not playing the game. We have not hired one lawyer on any new matter that's come into this office. We have used our internal lawyers. We have, in fact, we sent letters out to every single law firm that's being used on the outside, whether we intend to take the case back or not, and told them they had to mandatorily reduce their fees 15% across the board. So whatever they were making, we cut their fees by 15% right off the top. And then we're looking at cases right now, and we're bringing cases inside, which is creating a problem in terms of manpower, because for the last 12, 16 years, these lawyers have not been called upon to do work other than to supervise. You know, there are some lawyers that really work hard. There are some lawyers that are monitoring litigation, and we need to bring up the level of lawyering within the office and get those people that have been marginalized. And they haven't been marginalized by the lack of that they don't want to do the work, because they do want to do the work. The lawyers in the office, by and large, are great lawyers. I'm finding that out. They are very, very good lawyers. But they've been marginalized for so long that they've lost the confidence in their ability to do some of this complicated stuff. But the more we expose them to it, and the more help that we give them in getting it done, they're doing it. To date, in the last 100 days, we have taken 18 cases to jury trial. 18 cases. We have sustained 18 victims, the largest of which was the Pena case. Those of you know what the Pena case is? Pena was the gentleman who had a 19-month-old daughter, and he used her as a human shield while he engaged in a gun battle with LAPD. For years, we saw what happened with the Tenny Pierce case, the dog food case. We settled that. That case should have never been settled. It should have gone to a jury, but it didn't, because for the longest time, we were afraid to defend ourselves in front of a jury. We were afraid that the jury would say the city of Los Angeles is at fault. And so we took the hit and we wrote the check. It was a hard call. It was a hard call to sit there and listen to the evidence. And believe me, I sat there with Bill Carter and Kurt Leising in my conference room, and I had the lawyers try that case in front of me, the Pena case. And I asked them about the evidence. I asked them questions about the facts. I asked them questions about the motions in limine, the exclusion motions that would be heard, how the case is going to be presented. And at the end of the day, we made a decision to go forward. Now, this was crucial because the consent decree was about to get lifted. It was about to be lifted. We were still operating under the consent decree at the time that this case was tried. LA, for the last 10 years, paid $10 million a year for an outside agency to monitor its performance as to whether or not it operated within the bounds of how a police agency should operate. All the stats. Think about that. 10 years of consent decree was in place. It cost us about $100 million. It cost you and I about $100 million of our tax money to make sure that LAPD was operating properly. Now, at the time that the consent decree was put in place, and that's another thing, it was a consent decree. It was another settlement. It wasn't a litigation decree. It was a settlement. We agreed to be bound by this thing. On my watch, that's not going to happen. We'll litigate it. We'll litigate it. Because I believe that we have the finest police agency in the world in Los Angeles Police Department. If you, I invite any one of you to walk with me next Wednesday, or next November, first Wednesday of the month, and watch the Los Angeles Police Department in action. And I can give you example of an example. In the Pena case, I'll give you an example of Dan Sanchez, who took a bullet in the chest trying to rescue that girl and continued to move forward and try to save her life. Randall Simmons. I mean, you know, it's amazing. But in any event, in that case, with the consent decree pending, and knowing that the evidence that would be brought in that courtroom could be heard by the judge who's going to make a decision to lift the consent decree or keep it in place, I decided to go forward. Because I thought the public had a right to know exactly how the police department acted. And let 12 citizens tell you that a person who fires 41 shots at the police department while he's holding his daughter hostage in his hand, somehow the police did something wrong when his daughter suffered a gunshot wound and died. Because that guy was shooting not only at the police, but at his stepdaughter and his mother. And then they both sued us. I'll be damned if I'm going to settle that case. And we tried it. And we won. And we won. The exposure was in the $50 to $60 million range. It would have bankrupted the city of Los Angeles. We would have had to take a bond measure out to pay for the damages. Pretty big loss, huh? Now think about this. Trutanich loses $60 million case after Michael Jackson, after Laura Chick, after Billboard litigation. I mean, just think about how when we hit the ground running, we hit the ground, there was no honeymoon period, man. We hit the ground running. And so we had this case, and we won it. Now, it just so happens that the day we won that case, the morning, it was a Friday morning, I remember it like it was yesterday, the LA Times was in my office doing a fluff piece on the first 60 days of office, or the first 30 days, or whatever it was. And the lawyer that was in charge of the team that was in court burst into my office. Now, Bill Carter's in there with me. He burst in, he says, "We won." Now, I had known that we were going to argue the case, and I thought we'd be about maybe 6-7 hours in argument. But the judge took, after motions, the judge took it away from the jury. The evidence was so clear, he said, there's nothing to decide. LAPD is not at fault, and he non-suited them after the close of their evidence. That's a big win. That's a big win. And I reached over to Bill Carter, and I went like this. I just grabbed his hand. the LA Times reports, Trutanich celebrates LAPD bullet that kills baby. I called up Bill Nottingham, I called up Maeve Reston, and I talked to Robert Green. I went in and actually saw Robert Green, the head of the editorial board, and I told them, in my own inevitable and enviable way, I said, you had the opportunity to become the New York Times or the Washington Post, and instead you opted to be the National Enquirer. Because the true story here is the success of the LAPD. We had a police department that went through the Rampart scandal. And today they were vetted by a jury of their peers and they were found not liable. You know? Big win, but we've had 18 more of those. And let me tell you something, 4 or 5 of those cases were quadriplegic cases, where we would normally have settled those cases based upon the liability, just based upon the damages alone, regardless of the liability. It's a hard job, because not only do I have to deal with the development issues and the billboard issues, but we also have to deal with the lawsuits. We get sued all the time for everything. And then we have labor issues, and we get sued by employers or employees who feel they've been wrongfully not promoted. And we've had those lawsuits, and we've won those lawsuits. Listen to this one. We've only had one case tried by an outside counsel. And after he tried the case, I fired him. He won, and then I fired him and brought the case back inside because he charged me too much. It's a true story. We are going to watch your taxpayer dollars. This is a city attorney's office. I have about 600 lawyers, about 550 to be honest with you. And those 550 lawyers are going to be defending your treasury. And we're going to get to the point where we do everything that the city demands. We can do bonds, we can do transactions, we can do civil, we can do billboards, we can do development. We're going to be able to do everything. But in the past, there's been no planning for obsolescence. People would retire, and then we would never fill that gap with somebody who knew the job, and we'd go outside to hire that person. And we'd become dependent on outside counsel. Well, we are now planning for obsolescence. We are now teaching. We've started the Bureau of Investigation, I talked about in my campaign, and we also started an Academy of Justice to teach our lawyers how to be better lawyers. And trust me, they are good lawyers. When you win 18 in a row, somebody knows what they're doing. We're cracking down on tax cheats. Here's a good one for you. So many people owe the city of Los Angeles money, and we don't collect it. And by the time we get around to collecting it, they file bankruptcy and hit their dollars. And so, I didn't know that. I didn't know that in the campaign, but now I understand that we're owed about $100 million. If I had that $100 million in my hand right now, guess what? We wouldn't have any budget problems. So we've started now a debt collection unit, much like the collection unit modeled after the United States Attorney's Office. And we are going after the people that owe us money from judgments that we have not collected. And in fact, when people owe us money, my first thing that I've told my lawyers now to do is pre-judgment writ of attachments. Being the government, we don't sue people that really don't owe us money. We won't sue you unless you truly owe us money. But what's happened is that we'll sue you, we'll get a judgment, and then we'll delay in collecting on that judgment for whatever reason the government takes. That's not going to happen anymore. But just to make sure that the person that owes us money, can't beat us out of the money anymore, we're going to go and get a pre-judgment writ of attachment, attach the property, hold it in trust so that nobody can sell the property, and then go back and get our money that is owed to you. In addition to that, we're seeking subrogation. When somebody sues us because somebody else does something wrong, we're going to go back and get that subrogation, get that money back, put back into the treasury so that your dollars are not used to pay somebody else's judgment. We're working on quality of life issues, the billboards. We had our first victory in the billboard case here in the last 8 years. The Liberty Media matter, where they challenged the ICO. And by the way, if you look at medical marijuana, and you look at the billboard litigation, they are mirroring themselves. The medical marijuana is using the billboard playbook. But they're going to lose. Trust me.
an attorney.
They're going to lose because we are doing it better and smarter now. The council trusts us. They trust that we're going to be consistent. They trust that we're going to give them good legal advice and that we're responsive. I've put in a policy now that if someone asks for a legal opinion, they will get a legal opinion within 3 days, 72 hours. If we're not capable of doing the research within that 72 hours, then within the 72 hours of the request, they'll get a letter back from the lawyer that's handling that matter, giving them an exact time when that opinion will come in. Just as if you hired a private law firm. No different. We are upping the responsibility of the lawyers in the office to respond to our client. We are becoming good lawyers for a great client. On the billboard litigation, we are waiting now to see what happens on the Summit Media lawsuit that's pending. That will determine whether or not the Clear Channel settlement will go forward or will get blown up. We're not a party to that. We have to sit back and watch, and that's what we're doing. Medical marijuana. I'm just going through some of the issues, and then you guys can ask me any questions you want. Interesting. This is a bill that was sponsored by Paul Koretz when he was the Assemblyman for West Hollywood, except that the compassionate use of marijuana is a great thing. I have no problem with it, except there's no skeletal to it. There's no direction as to how this was to be implemented. So you have medical marijuana being legalized for those who have a recommendation by a physician. How do we get medical marijuana to those that need it? Well, before we could blink an eye, we had 197 open and operating in the city of Los Angeles, so we passed an ICO, an interim control ordinance that bans any more medical marijuana facilities from opening. Because San Francisco has 50, Oakland has 4, I think San Diego has 3. You know, if you added up all the medical marijuana facilities in the state of California and you compared them to Los Angeles, we have more in LA than everywhere else in the state put together. We have now opened about 896. Yeah. Did I say something? Say Jesus? He's not here tonight, but he's listening. And I can tell you, it is amazing. It is amazing what has gone on. Because we opened the door. When we first saw this issue occurring, we looked at it as a land use issue, a plum issue, a planning issue. We didn't look at it as a law enforcement issue. And so we created something that would get us over the land use question, and that was a backdoor hardship exemption. The backdoor hardship exemption cost us 800 applications for hardship. As soon as they filed their application, some of them went out and opened up these places without any permits on the basis of hardship. Well, they'll soon be getting their answer as to whether or not they're a hardship. We've decided 83 at council, and 83 have been denied. But let's kind of go through this issue because it's really an interesting issue. We have a ban on any new facilities in LA. We need to find a way to get people who truly need compassionate marijuana as a medicine into their hands. Now the question I have to ask you is whether or not you want the supplier of that medicine to be a collective or someplace that is unknown. And that's the question. That really is a true question. Now let me give you why that's important. A few weeks back there was a fire in Santa Barbara, and it was caused by growers of marijuana. A few days after that, there was some evidence established by the DEA that it was growers that came from Mexico, from the Mexican cartels, that were actually growing it in the Santa Barbara hills. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I really don't care. But what I looked at was around that what was remnant there. And there were insecticides, pesticides, growth accelerants, fertilizers that were systemic. I began to think about this, and I had an opportunity to meet someone at the FDA lab. Now, for those of you who have never been to the FDA lab, it is really a neat place to go to. I had an opportunity to tour the new lab down in Irvine. It's 4 stories of just guys in white coats, pocket protectors, you know, open up bottles of ketchup from all different countries in the world, hot sauce, you know, pencils, scraping the paint off the pencils, testing it for whatever's in it to see if there's any lead in the paint. I mean, it's an amazing facility of scientists. And I was just blown away by all these scientists at these workstations testing products from every spot on the globe. Because you know why? Because nothing gets into this country, water, without it being regulated by some aspect of this country government. Nothing. This Capri Sun package, the metal it's used, or the tinfoil, this, cornflakes, all of it has been tested somehow by some regulatory agency, either through the FDA or through the Sherman Law, which is the California version of the FDA. So now, I'm thinking as I'm walking through this place, there's no product that doesn't get tested except one. Guess what that one is?
Marijuana.
Exactly. It's a medicine. Now you remember when we had the Tylenol scare? They found one bottle of Tylenol with something in it, and they yanked Tylenol off every shelf in the nation. Every shelf in the nation lost its Tylenol because one bottle of Tylenol we were afraid that they were going to happen again. So I had 3 samples surreptitiously bought in CD10, CD14, and CD9. Each of those CDs are about 3 or 4 miles away from each other. Okay? You would think that someone in CD9 would not know the owner of CD14 or CD10. They would be disassociated. And I did it on purpose that way, so that there would be a distance. Because I had a sneaky feeling, based upon what I found in based upon what was found in Santa Barbara, what I was going to find in this report. Sure enough, when I got the report back, there was 1,600 times the allowable limit for ingestion on an herb of bifidrin, which is an insecticide. On one sample coming out of one of the CDs, I forget right now if it was CD9 or CD14, it was one of the two. The other sample had 80 times the ingestible limit. 80. So now here we are with 2 tainted samples. If I found 2 tainted samples of Sudafed in a store someplace, they'd be screaming to get that medicine off the shelves. Today, at the Monterey Country Club, there was 150 people screaming to have more medical marijuana accessibility, knowing that it was tainted with insecticides. Today I gave a speech. I brought a can of Raid with me. I put up my salad on the podium. I said, I don't like the salad dressing. I brought my own. And I sprayed the salad with Raid. And I said, who among you will eat that? That's less than 1,600 times the ingestible limit of a pesticide. But yet we're selling this without any type of scrutiny through our medical marijuana dispensaries. We have a law that requires that all drugs, all medicine, be scrutinized by the Sherman Law. But no one's following that for this particular product. And yet we now have empirical evidence that at least in 2 cases, it's tainted. And so we need now to go slow with this issue. Not to cut off medical marijuana, because there are, listen, people who have cancer, who are going through chemo, it is shown that marijuana will cut down on the nausea. People with glaucoma, people who have pain, those that truly need it, it's not the intent of anyone to cut that back. But we're seeing through our law enforcement that 90% of the people that are buying it are between the ages of 18 and 40.
Surprise.
And so we have issues with this, the way it's being sold. The case law says you cannot transact money over the counter. The new cases are coming down. We are waiting for case law to define how this law of compassionate use has to be applied. But in the interim, even if you want to sell it, which I think is illegal, but even if it was, it should be vetted through the Sherman Law like any other product. Because wouldn't you like to know if you had an autoimmune deficiency that you were inhaling or eating 1,600 times the legal limit of a carcinogen? Because if your immune deficiency, if your immune system is weakened and you're eating this carcinogen, your susceptibility to increased cancer is greater. But yet, there's no labeling, no reporting, no vetting, but the shout is we need our medicine. No, the shout is we need our tainted medicine as it exists right now. We need to make sure that that medicine is safe. And so we'll go slow, and as we go slow, we'll get more direction from the court as to how this law should be applied. Now, I've been there 100 days. If you count the number of issues that we've had to address in the last 100 days, you're going to say, wow. And I've only gone through a couple of them. I mean, all this is within a milieu of a situation where we're furloughing people. I'm negotiating with one of my labor groups right now to make sure that to determine whether or not we're going to have layoffs. It is an amazing, amazing environment. But I can tell you this: I've never had more fun in my life. I've never worked harder in any particular job I've ever had. I'm working 20 hours a day. The day I started, I got up, I was out of bed on my feet at 4 o'clock in the morning, and out the door by 5:45. And after doing about 30 or 40 minutes on the computer answering emails. And at my first event by 6 o'clock. It's long hours, it's tiring hours, but the job is so fulfilling because I can actually feel the ship turning around, and I can feel the leadership occurring within the office, and it's a great thing. And I'm so very thankful for each of you for putting me in this position.
Oh, it's like 10 after 8. We do have business, but I do want to take some questions. First, we'll start with the board, and as I give numbers, and they got to remember that number. So I want to see a show of hands.
I'm sorry I went so long, by the way.
Oh, no.
We'll can the rest of the agenda, don't worry about it.
We voted for you. All right, so let's see a show of hands of who's possibly asked a question or asked, so I can give numbers. Paul 1, Barbara 2, Shannon, Stacy's 3 out there. Where did I see a hand? Hand. And so you're going to be number 4. Anybody else?
Terry.
Okay, you're 5. And Ron 6. And anybody going once, going twice? 6 is good. And Steve just came here. Guess where from? Okay, let's all put our
I have Dodger blue. I'm sorry I missed it, but for a Dodger game, it was a great game. We won a 9th inning. Incredible game.
Yeah.
I was going to take it. It was incredible.
Okay.
2 bases loaded.
So we're going to start with the questions, but before we do, very quickly, because I know you'll be leaving right after this, we're doing an event on Saturday to raise money for the schools. It's called Take Me Out to the Movies, and each school sells their tickets. That will be included for the $6 ticket plus the movie, blah, blah, blah. But here's something you'll be interested in. School on Wheels. It's a group in downtown that gives things to children, homeless children, so they can go to school. Backpacks, paper, headsets. And so if you look down there, we're bringing stuff tonight to give, and at the movie event, each child that comes is going to ask.
Are you giving that through the shelters?
We're giving it, we're collecting it for School on Wheels. So.
Okay.
That's a
Let
group.
me give you a little hint, okay, on downtown stuff. Downtown is throw out the rules. There are no rules downtown in Skid Row. What you think is blue is not blue. It may look blue, but trust me, it's green. And what you think is red is yellow. It's just different. You give that to people who have children, let's say walking down the street with a cart, and they have children following them, that will be sold to buy drugs.
No, we're going through,
You got to go through a shelter.
Well, School on Wheels basically teams tutors up with homeless children who are trying to keep up with schoolwork. They fall behind because
And they work through the shelters.
Make sure you're working through a legitimate shelter,
Yeah.
because I'll tell you, even food. You'll watch. If you come with me next month on a Wednesday. Meet me down there. I get there at 6 o'clock. You will see trucks, vans pull up with sandwiches, and they're handing the sandwiches out to and the people are gathering like pigeons on with you throwing out popcorn. Okay. Speaking of pigeons, you know
May we have School on Wheels contact you? And,
Sure.
And hook up and
But what happens? They take those sandwiches, they move down the street, and they sell them.
They barter.
They barter for drugs. They barter for drugs. So you walk away thinking I just did something really good, but in reality, the fact of the matter is, if you don't go through a shelter where they watch it they consume it on the spot, it becomes a product for bartering. I'm telling you, it's a whole world to itself, and we are changing it. I've got a plan in place now. I just met with Sergio Diaz today, with a couple of my injunction writers, my chief of criminal, and we are moving in that direction to change it. We're going to make, by Christmas, I'm going to make Skid Row safe for the kids that are living down.
Okay, who's number one? Paul, go ahead.
Paul Resnick, I'm the president of the West LA Chamber of Commerce and also an alternate, business alternate on the board. But copious notes, very refreshing. We thank you.
Can't hear you.
With us.
Can't hear.
Okay, I'll project.
There we go.
Good shot.
I was saying thank you for the time and the information. My question is this. Medical marijuana has a huge cash flow.
30,000 a day.
Yeah, and with 890 outlets, they can become very quickly, if they haven't already, crime centers rather than areas, stores that dispense
200 robberies out and around medical marijuana facilities so far in the city of Los Angeles. At least one murder that I can talk about as a result of medical marijuana, and I can't even count the number of assaults out or near. There are 256 medical marijuana facilities right now located near parks, schools, and churches, not to mention daycare centers.
How is your office coordinating with law enforcement to mitigate those circumstances?
Oh, we are. You watched the news tonight?
Yeah.
You saw it on the news tonight.
I heard on the radio.
Steve Cooley and I are like this on this issue. I'll tell you, it is so great to be able to stand next to one of the, just a great DA who's got the right idea, who's strong enough to take a stand and lead. To lead on this issue alone would be difficult because it is such just a lightning rod of controversy. Let me give you a little anecdote if you don't mind. I talked about the pesticide that we found, didn't I? But I didn't really tell you anything about it, right? So Paul, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do you kill the red fire ants in your house?
With raid?
Right. So you have red fire ants?
No.
That's right, none of us do. None of us have red fire ants because they're not indigenous to California. Okay? But bifenthrin
Yes.
is primarily used to eradicate red fire ants. Now, we use it in this quantity in California. It's very small in California and some of the surrounding states. Very, very small amounts. But in Mexico, they have dead zones because they use it to kill red fire ants. And it's a systemic poison. It goes up through the plant. So you can't wash it off. That's the pesticide or the insecticide we're finding. So now, let me see if I get this right. if, you know, I always used to argue to a jury when I used to take a circumstantial case, you know, trial, I used to say, you know, if it's got big ears, long nose, short tail, eats peanuts, and lives in a zoo, you know, you got a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Well, in this case, you've got a pesticide that's primarily used in Mexico that's systemic. You have large dead zones because of the eradication of red ants being placed on this. I've verified that through the United States Attorney's Environmental Division. And if it's coming across the border and being brought into this country, I'm sure it's not on the list of imports. Okay? That means it's illegally being brought across the border. It's being smuggled in across the border. Now the next question is, if it is being brought across the border, and that pesticide is the, and that's not the only, I'm going to tell you. So that pesticide is something that you could look at. Okay? It's something that you can look at to make a decision as to where it's coming from. Okay? So if I go here to CD9 and CD14 and I find it there, my question is, how did it go from the border to those different CDs? And if I'm right that it came from the border to those different CDs, that means that maybe, just maybe, what we're seeing up in Santa Barbara might be happening here in LA. Now, Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola have been in a market share war for 50 years. But you know how they fight? By television advertising, by newspaper advertising, by radio advertising. I have yet to see the CEO of Pepsi-Cola go out and shoot the CEO of Coca-Cola. But the cartels do that. We had 18 murders shot in Tijuana. We had people in Mexico beheaded. 3 years ago in Ensenada, we had about 25 shootings. And that's how they get their market share. They eliminate the competition. I sure as heck do not want that coming this way.
On the legal front, isn't there some way to be effective at the state level to have this law rewritten?
I think the laws,
do it right.
I think you're right, but I think right now we're at the point where the judges are doing it. The judges are passing it. We've got 3 or 4 cases in the pipeline now. We've had 3 or 4 cases come down. The judges have said no over-the-counter sales. They said that collective growth is the only way. But if you apply the Sherman Law to this, let me tell you what the Sherman Law does. The Sherman Law says you have a right to inspect the growers. Because if you go to Costco and you buy spinach, okay, you can be assured that the FDA and the health department has inspected that spinach. We just saw the recall of all that spinach. Yeah. How do you think that all happened? Because an administrative agency of the government applied either the FDA law or the Sherman Law to it, and they inspected it. So that means the growers have to be inspected by the government and signed off. That means they have to be identified. The growers have to be identified. They don't want that. Because if you can't exchange money and you have to do it in a collective form, there's no money to be made. We take the profit out of it. This is not about the distribution of healthy marijuana to sick people. There's another issue here. We did not pass the commercial marijuana statute. We passed the compassionate marijuana statute. And that is the difference. And we have to stay close to what we passed.
It doesn't have any heat.
But trust me, through abatement actions, through our safe neighborhoods, our prosecutors are really working hard on this. We are about to start. But we're going slow to make sure we're right. I'm not going to expose you or this city to needless lawsuits. I'm not going to jump off half-cocked and do something that I don't think is legally correct. When I am sure that we are in the right legally, I will move forward with what we're doing. I've had this information regarding this marijuana now for about 4 weeks. I sat on it to make sure that I got the results so I could vet the results to make sure that they're properly replicable. And they are.
Barbara, here too. Okay. Barbara Brady, question on enforcement. Many of us who work with the city on billboard issues and other issues find that the fines that are assessed against those who break the law are often meaningless. They are not a deterrent. They don't even reflect the cost of what it takes for the city to bring a case forward. And I'm wondering if there is, in this time of fiscal crisis,
honest with you, I don't care about fines. I really don't care. I'm done fining billboard companies.
Get rid of them.
I don't want fines. They can have their money. I'm gonna take their liberty. First, they're gonna abide by the law. Illegal billboards in the city of Los Angeles are coming down. Every one of those billboard companies know it because I've met with every single one of them in my office and I told them just that. If you got an illegal board, you better pull it down because it's not my responsibility to tell you it's illegal. But when I find out it's illegal and I prove it's illegal to a jury, I'm locking you up. And in fact, I may arrest you when I file the case, depending on the strength of my case. I'm done. We are not going to be the patsies anymore. I have 28 civil lawsuits in my office right now brought by billboard companies because we pussyfooted around with them. We have a law on the books that's been enjoined. But it's only enjoined the city law. It hasn't enjoined the state law. It hasn't enjoined the building codes. It hasn't enjoined all the other laws that I can get them under. And I will. And we are going to do it. And you will see this sooner than later. At the end of the day, this city has to get a backbone when it comes to these companies. The days of pay to play are over. I don't care about billboard contributions. I don't care. I want to level the playing field. Once the playing field is level, every one of these billboard companies will survive and they'll make good money. They won't have to break the rules in order to make money. That's why we have antitrust laws. That's why we have all these laws that regulate commerce, banking, and everything else. You level the playing field so they all play under the same rule. In LA, that's not the case. It's been the case of, I give you a contribution, I turn my back. That's over. When I took office, I told you that we're going to have an honest and transparent office, and that's what we're going to do. And you guys have a remedy. If you don't like the way I do things in 4 years, you've got a remedy. Get rid of me. That's your choice. I understand that's government. But I hope at the end of 4 years you'll see that there's a guy there that really does care, and I've got my hands on the controls, and I'm not going to let it get away from us. And if we can keep this thing, the way I think it's going, turn this ship around, we're going to have a great city. But there has to be an adult in the house.
For those times when there's not an adult in the house, it would be nice to have the structure there to create deterrence.
We have the structure. We have 17200. We don't need any more laws.
On everything.
Yeah.
The fines reflect.
We don't need it. We got 17200. Business and profession code violation provides for disgorgement. I can take every dollar of their profit. From every little illegal board that they have, I can get them to disgorge their profit under 17200.
Talking about all across the board.
This is a tough issue. I agree with you. But we are. I'll tell you, I'm tuned up on this one. I go through it every single day. This is a great issue.
Stacy, you're three.
Yes, well, to return to the medical marijuana, I wanted to ask you, because I heard on the radio, Steve Cooley saying that he was going to shut every single one of the dispensaries down because they were for profit, and they weren't intended to be for profit, which kind of is in conflict with what you're saying about going slow. So I just wanted to ask for clarification.
No, it's done. We are going to shut down those that are operating illegally. I'm not willing to come out and say every single dispensary is operating illegally. There may be a true collective out there. I'm not that familiar with every single business out there. I'm real careful. Listen, I've got the civil side of these cases to defend. Steve has got the criminal side. And so I'm not willing to go out with a 6-inch brush and just, and just paint the board across the board people who might be operating lawfully. There may be a true collective out there that I'm not aware of. I haven't seen one yet, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I don't know how you can have a storefront operation and pay for your cost if you're being a collective. I've seen their price list. Have you seen the calendars that they're putting out? The glossy with the girls and the joints, and it's amazing. This is an industry. I have yet, it may be a sexy drug, but even Viagra doesn't advertise like that. It's amazing. It's amazing to me.
And I just wanted something else too. I imagine the city is losing millions of dollars a year from the people who are stealing recyclables out of the blue cans. Is there anything that we can do about that?
Yeah, report it. There's so much. I'd love to be able to go after it. I don't have the manpower. We're furloughing people. I'm trying to build a 200-man investigatory force. LAPD is give you some little graffiti statistics. There were 650,000 graffiti locations last year in the city of Los Angeles. Do you know how many calls the LAPD there were regarding graffiti last year? 600,000.
Whoa.
Whoa, I was right. That's why it takes you 45 minutes to get through on 911. The bottom line is that LAPD is stretched to the limits. We do need more cops. We need more cops. This is a big city, and per capita, we are underdeployed. But we have a budget crisis. And I agree with the mayor on this point. We need to put cops on the street. We need to find a way to make this city safer. And I've stood with the mayor in many press conferences and said just that. That this is a city that unfortunately has to have a large police force in order to keep us safe. And so it makes for tough budget decisions. Very tough.
Okay, number 4.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Holberts, and I'm just a citizen.
So am I.
I would like to take issue with this marijuana initiative. I have a question first. What do you mean by collective? Do you mean that they dispense it free? Is that what you're meaning?
No, what happens is that what the law envisioned was that there would be a group of known associates, neighbors, friends. They get together and they would collectively grow a certain amount of plants. And then they would take their harvest and they would split it amongst each other, and they would continue, and whatever costs there were that would cost to grow it, which we figure is about 20 cents an ounce, okay, would be shared collectively amongst the group. That's how I think the compassionate use, and that's what the cases now are tending to point to as being what they envisioned by the compassionate use ordinance. They never envisioned the Walmart of marijuana on the corner.
But if a patient comes with a prescription
No, it's not a prescription. You can't have a prescription of marijuana because the prescription is controlled by the Federal Food and Drug Association. It's illegal under federal law. It has to be a recommendation under state law.
How are they just walking in without a prescription today?
That's right.
Oh, I understood they have to have a prescription.
No, they have to have a recommendation.
A doctor's letter.
A doctor's recommendation, not a letter.
It's not a
Doesn't have to be in writing. It can be an oral recommendation by a doctor.
Who's next door to
Or in
facility.
the dispensary.
Next door to the facility. So they go there, pay, what is it, $100 to get that, then they go next door to buy it.
So let's assume that you can clean up all this problem with contamination of marijuana, and that we can get some kind of control over how people obtain it legally, so that people who are sick need it. Wouldn't it bring a lot of revenue to a state that is in economic distress?
Okay? How much money does alcohol cost us a year to enforce?
I don't know, but I think alcohol and marijuana are pretty equal in
Okay,
that
they may very well be. Do you want to engage in
some way.
another bureaucracy like that? And that's something that's a societal level. Listen, I'm the lawyer. I don't make policy. I follow the law. You make policy. The legislature makes policy. But they tell me what the law is, and I enforce what they tell me it is. If they told me that marijuana was legal, you know what I'd tell the cops? Stand down. It's legal. They haven't told me that. I know my role. My role is to be the lawyer for the city of Los Angeles. And as the lawyer of the city of Los Angeles, when the law says that it's a compassionate use statute, then I will follow the law. I'm not a policy guy. And I've had these guys that had this discussion with me, should we have legal marijuana? Well, that's something that the voters passed a law, and that was the compassionate use ordinance. And the compassionate use ordinance was written by an assemblyman who was located in West Hollywood, who had a constituency that needed that because they had autoimmune deficiencies by and large in that constituency. And as a result of that, it was written for the compassionate use, not the commercial use. Now, if the voters had voted for the commercial use of marijuana and it had passed, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We would be having a discussion on the basis of the Sherman Law.
Right.
But that's about it.
We still have a job to do in cleaning up some of the problems, but in the essence of...
And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to clean up the problems right now. Remember this, the sale of marijuana is a felony. The city attorney prosecutes misdemeanors. I don't prosecute felonies, I prosecute misdemeanors. So 11360 and 11359 are felonies. They're not wobblers, they're straight felonies. They fall under Steve Cooley's jurisdiction. But Sherman law violations fall under mine.
Okay, number 5.
Yep.
Hi. I'm really glad that you're our city attorney. I do have serious problems with what's going on. I come at this issue from early 1980s when I was required to go out and buy marijuana on the street for my mother who was dying. It was a big problem.
She should do it. She should have it.
But the collective idea to me doesn't make any sense whatsoever because my mother and all the other people who need it cannot go be growing it.
You're right.
So I have real problems with what I'm hearing. I think there needs to be serious regulation. The state statute says that growers have to be California and licensed. It seems to me that the first thing that you can do is go through and shut down everybody who can't prove that they are buying their marijuana from the grower. I have people, friends of mine who live in Northern California who grow it. And there are other people who legally grow it. And if it's not from those people, close them down. That ends the issue of contamination for the most part. It ends the issue of cartels getting involved because they won't be able to. The people who are growing legally are licensed to do that. And I think you're absolutely right. We need to do things like check it to be sure that it's not contaminated. But I think there needs to be places like, well, Oakland, San Francisco, as you said, San Diego, these cities have managed. Now this is a your mess. It was made before you got here.
I know.
But you're going to have to clean it up.
You're right.
And cleaning it up doesn't mean that every single marijuana dispensary needs to be closed.
No,
Cleaning it up means that you have to regulate them reasonably. Shut them down if they don't have legal marijuana. That's the fastest and it seems to me easiest thing. Then there's going to be no reason for the cartels to get involved. And I think that those kinds of things need to be done first.
You're right.
To say that people are going to have to grow it collectively seems to me to be
I had an article that was published last week in CNN magazine, and I didn't bring it with me, and I wish I would have, because it would have been perfect for you to read this. You know the United States used to grow marijuana? Yeah, honest to God. The United States of America used to grow marijuana. And in fact, as 20 years ago, you could have gotten a prescription for legal marijuana from a doctor and gone to a pharmacy and had it filled.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I had no idea. I read it in this magazine. There are
prepackaged cigarette form.
This ballot initiative, I don't think was well thought out when it was put in place.
But nobody else has a problem with us.
Well, no, that's not true.
Well, the LA is the one that's got the real big issue with the 800.
Well, because the other places, they were quick to put in the permits and stop it before it proliferated. Because we have 15 different council people here that had different views on it, we're slower to act on it, and
No, didn't that? Not slow.
Okay, but the bottom line is that it is what it is right now.
Right.
Okay, and I can't go back and point fingers and blame people. I'm not really into doing that.
That was a waste of time.
If you want my policy, what I think should happen, honestly, I think that we should be able to use our licensed pharmacies to get medical marijuana for those that need it, just like you would go to CVS. The problem is it's not a drug that they want to handle because of the crowd that's been associated with it and the crime that's come around it. And so it's a societal problem that we have to deal with. You're right. We got to find a way to make this distribution safe, and not only for the people that are working in the stores, because they're subject to robberies and murders and things of that nature, but the people that want to go into the stores and buy it, the people that need it, the product itself, And this is a policy decision that requires true leadership, someone who's willing to stand up at the state level and say, politics be damned, I need to find a solution to this. And we haven't had that person yet at the state level stand up and do that.
But aren't we going to have a proposition to vote on, and won't it include these kinds of parameters?
I don't know. Not yet. I haven't seen it.
I really know that we could go on all night about marijuana.
But I can tell you this, that if we don't do something in this area, the majority of the citizens in the state of California will vote to restrict it again, because we're having too many issues surrounding it. So we need to get real, we need the advocates and the regulators to get real in how we approach this issue. There's got to be a round table where you just can't come out and say, we want it, we want it, we want it. And you can't come out and say, no, no, no. There has to be a real discussion so that the people that truly need it, like your mother, get it.
It wasn't amusing trying to go.
I understand. And you shouldn't have to go through that. I agree with you.
She was 5. Who's 6?
I'm 6.
You're 6?
Hi, I'm Ron Stone.
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for being here. I represent the religious institutions in our neighborhood, and it's my understanding that hate crimes have been on the rise in Los Angeles County. So I was curious whether you and your office, I know there are different task forces in place, and the LAPD and district attorney. Is that something that you see your office playing a role? Obviously on the prosecution side, but also on the prevention side?
Well, first let me tell you that I don't know if I agree that hate crimes have been on the rise, because since I've been there, I haven't seen hate crime come across my desk.
I think what I was referring to is more in the last couple of years.
Okay, but Steve Cooley and I have agreed on a 17B4 policy. For those of you that don't know what 17B4 is, that's the distinction, the line that's drawn between felony and misdemeanor, wobblers versus felonies. Every single police report that comes into the city of Los Angeles is drawn up by the LAPD. If it is a wobbler, must, under our policy, be delivered to the district attorney first to be considered, and then rejected and brought to us. Okay? If a hate crime is brought to us, we will prosecute. We have absolutely no problems doing that, and I'm very sensitive to that. I'm extremely sensitive to that for whatever reason. Let me just tell you, in my view, when you have an assault or a robbery or a murder, it's a hate crime. There is no other way to explain it. I mean, but beyond that, if it's done for a specific reason of a person's sexuality, their ethnicity, or their religion, then that crime needs to be considered separately, and an additional punishment needs to be added.
Okay, 7. If it's about marijuana, that's who's 7. I know. I remember I did 7. Oh, it must have been 26. Okay. With that, we would like to introduce who we have working for you tonight. We have Susan Strick, who's the neighbor prosecutor, and Arturo.
Yes.
Works under your wing, as they say.
Let me just tell you, I'll tell you, I have the greatest group of lawyers working in this office, and all I had to do was take the chains off. These guys, they should be able to bow at the hip. They are doing the heavy lifting, not me. They're the ones that are out here making you guys proud, not me. And they need the encouragement, they need the accolades, not me. And if you go to our website, when a lawyer in our office does something good, it's that lawyer that gets the credit, not me. And that's how we build morale, that's how we get people wanting to come to work, and that's how we get the job done. And we're going to continue to do what we've done for the next 100 days that we did in the first 100 days, and hopefully throughout my term.
Okay, I was going to wait to stop the meeting to
Maybe
very
never.
quickly, 2 minutes, tell people what the neighborhood prosecutors do. So, because everybody says, well, why can't the neighborhood prosecutor do it? I go, no, they're not our own private prosecutor, right?
Well, the Neighborhood Prosecutor Program is a community-based program. We work with all of the neighborhood councils, the council offices, individual problems. When we get complaints of community-based issues, sometimes they might be a neighborhood issue that involves a human being needing some extra special help. Sometimes it might be I'm working with Jay on some issues of some either sober living in areas that have a residual effect on the community that becomes a nuisance. Sometimes it has to do with people illegally using their property for things. We don't just decide that we're going to go out there and prosecute somebody. The community comes to us and tells us, this is a problem, can you help us? And I think that the real truth of it is that we partner with other city and, like yourselves, governmental entities to try to have a gestalt approach to solving problems. So, for example, when Ron talks about hate crimes, immediately comes to my mind that at one time in West Los Angeles we had a phenomenal clergy council. And some of the other areas have a clergy council. The clergy council is a phenomenal thing because we bring all of the people involved in different religious backgrounds and they get together at a table quarterly or however often they're available to do so. And they help each other through the times. Like we just had the Jewish holidays, where we'll have other religious organizations that aren't participating, aren't religious during those holidays, help out with things like parking, making sure that people can get to and from the locations, helping out with security, so that people feel safer. And then it's exchanged then on Christmas or on Easter time. It's exchanged and it's reciprocated by the people that aren't participating in those particular holidays. It's a phenomenal place to talk to schools and bring in schools at the same time. It's just a really wonderful place to bring people in. So who do we prosecute? I mean, because there are prosecutions. We use the prosecution aspect of our job to sort of as the hammer, because there are other prosecutors within the city attorney's office who do phenomenal work. And what we do is when we can't solve the problem in an alternative way, the Neighborhood Prosecutor Program says, okay, now we're going to use our prosecutorial arm, and we do file criminal cases against people. We just had a 3-day community prosecution conference that finished up this afternoon. Our new city attorney had an opportunity to speak there and talk about his investment in the community. There's such amazingly wonderful things going on nationwide in community prosecution, alternatives to the cost of prosecuting nuisance types of crimes. Barbara and I have a case we've worked on for many years. It really would be perfect if we had a community-based court that was supported by the community, that had community involvement to collaboratively come up with ideas. So I'm going to leave my cards here. You can call me. I get to supervise 4 or 5 other lawyers. I get to work collaboratively with you guys. I work very, very closely with LAPD, with the council office, with schools, with what we call West Traffic. We've done some school safety issues around traffic, around alcohol abuse, around drug abuse in the schools, and it's been a really wonderful and rewarding opportunity for me as a prosecutor. I spent 20 years of my life before I came to the city attorney's office working as a defense attorney. So I have a very sort of rounded view of these things. I can look at them from both sides. And so that's who I am, and that's what we do, and I thank Newt for letting us continue to do it. You're welcome to stay, or if you'd like to see your wife tonight.
Just one thing on what was just said. We have a new program. First off, we've established a faith-based advisory committee that's being run by Noel Jones, Bishop Noel Jones from the City of Refuge. We also have established a brand new diversion diversion program, a deferred entry of judgment program, and it's just starting, and it's also faith-based, and we're giving it the empirical test down in the harbor, a small insular test. We have 36 ministers who have volunteered. When I was a kid, and when most of you in this room were kids, we didn't have the internet. So if you did something wrong, somebody'd have to actually go look at it to find it. And chances are, if you did it, nobody ever saw it again because it got buried away. Today, if you do something wrong, it haunts you for the rest of your life. It's on the internet, and people can find it very easily with Google search, Zava search, whatever kind of search engine they have to find it. These kids today, we're asking them to lead a clean, stellar life from almost the moment of birth. So we need to find a way not to create criminals by kids that make mistakes. Those of you that raise children, know that kids make mistakes. That's just part of being a kid. But today, kids can't make mistakes anymore because we track everything they do. So we have to be able to give them a mulligan, if you will. All right? We got to be able to give them a shot at growing old without having to have to live down what they did when they were 18 years old because they made a mistake when they were at college, or they made a mistake at 21 when they went out with a buddy of theirs. The bottom line is we have to find ways, alternatively, to use the criminal justice system. So we've come up with this mentoring program, and this is what it is, real briefly, and we're going to apply it to the rest of the city once I know that it works. And that's this. Kid picks up a beef, we refer him to our deferred entry and judgment program. He goes into a mentorship program. That mentorship program is where he has to go and meet with a particular faith-based minister and get counseling on a weekly basis. But it's not just going to get counseling. I also teamed up with a company called Quick Knowledge, and I've had them, they're developing now a program of testing so that the kids will learn the message that they get from the mentoring, and they'll actually take a test and be graded on the internet by that test. And if they pass the course, within 12 months, they're gone. They're done, case dismissed, goodbye, no record. If it takes them a little longer because they're slow readers, 18 months, 24 months. 30 months, 36 months, all the way up to 5 years to get it completed. But eventually they will have completed the course and at least objectively, just like your driving test, you may not obey the law all the time, but you know the rules. They will know how to make smart decisions and have the lessons that they learned in mentoring objectively taught to them, and they will have taken tests by it. And so at the end of that time period, their case gets dismissed and they move on, and they've gotten their one mulligan. So if that works, and we're able to adapt that to the kids, they will have no record. And that means when they graduate from college, they will have no record. They'll be able to become police officers. They'll be able to become accountants. They'll be able to get licensing degrees, be able to become attorneys, nurses, doctors, without having to live down something they did when they were young and stupid, just like me.